Hello, I'm Jorge Gestoso. Welcome to a new program. On today's show, the crisis with Iran and the impeachment of President Trump could have an impact in the November elections in the United States? We ask our guest, Emilio Viano, political analyst and professor emeritus of American University. Emilio Viano, a warm welcome to the program.
Thank you for inviting me.
Emilio, President Trump was killing Iranian leader we're talking Qasem Soleimani, and he said, now America is safer after his death. Polls show that 55% of Americans believes that they are more unsafe after the killing. 56% disapprove the handling of the crisis. So was it positive or negative for President Trump to order the killing?
Well, obviously, he hoped that it would be very positive for him, strengthening his image as a leader that is decisive, that can act quickly, that doesn't have fear of using force when it is necessary, and that has built the military so that they can intervene effectively in situations like this. In reality, of course, many people may think that they are less safe because there may be a reaction by Iran, the desire for revenge, and this might someday, they may wait quite a bit of time, impact the lives of many people, maybe in this country, maybe abroad, maybe in the area of Iraq, Iran, or who knows where, an embassy that is not very well guarded in some other country in the world. So obviously, both are right. Those who are afraid that we are less safe have a good reason to think that way. We see that now they are expelling, let's say, over 20 Saudi Arabians because they are suspected of planning or plotting terrorist attacks in the United States. Imagine how many people might indeed be here that must be sympathetic and therefore try to intervene and take revenge for the death of Soleimani. Trump obviously thought the opposite, that he would shine as the great leader that can protect his people by eliminating what is in reality a brilliant strategist, a great general for the Iranians, but this also means that he had successes against American troops and against American allies. So in that sense, his disappearance certainly might make it more difficult for Iran to mount this type of operation or to maintain the coalition, because they have militias everywhere in the Middle East. They have them in Yemen, they have them in Lebanon, they have them in the Palestinian territories, they have them in Syria, they have them in Iraq. In other words, no doubt Soleimani had created this network. It was a master in controlling it, in organizing it, in keeping it together. Someone else, his successor, may not be as brilliant. So in that respect, it may also mean that, quote unquote, we are a little safer because of the lack of the same ability to motivate, to organize, and to launch attacks. We will see what happens in the near future. Up to now, it appears that both sides have retreated somewhat and are aware of what the consequences might be. No doubt, in a certain sense, the death of Soleimani, that initially infuriated the Iranians, because of events after that, like the downing of this Ukrainian airplane, have created now an opening for dissatisfied people in Iran to demonstrate and to even, unknown until now, demand the death of the Ayatollah. So these are very rare events in this country. So there are some breaches there where the government of Iran seems to be a little bit uncertain what to do, which way to go. For example, the repression now has not been as strong as just a few weeks ago, when apparently hundreds of people, minimally, the president likes to say 1,500, were killed by the government. So the leadership there also is a little bit uncertain which way to go. If this continues, possibly things might calm down because cooler heads might prevail. With a president like Trump, it is very hard to predict, because from one day to another he can change completely of his assessment of the situation, and he likes, in part because of his nature, he is impulsive to make decisions on a short range of time, and so it is unpredictable what might happen in the future.
And the justification of the killing has created a polemic. President Trump, at the beginning, said It was an imminent attack that was going to take place and was coordinated by Soleimani. Then he said, well, in reality, so he changed it because we believe that there were 4 embassies that was going to be attacked, not only Baghdad. And then the Secretary of Defense said, we were not aware that the embassies, and even the embassies were not notified before. On top of that, now they know that 7 months before the killing, President Trump has already decided to kill Soleimani if he was going to kill an American. The Washington Post says that is a confirmation that in the a little bit more than 1,000 days that he's in government, he has lied over 15,000 times. And that absolutely undermined his credibility, the respect to take military actions, because also he was not informing anyone except his friend Lindsey Graham playing golf in Mar-a-Lago. Anyone was aware that he was ordering the attack. In that sense, it's not undermining his credibility, his position, the way what he was handling the justification of the attack?
Well, sure, of course. And this has been talked about a lot by many people, particularly, of course, on many television programs. The problem is that for those who really support him, this is something to which they don't pay any attention. In other words, they believe in him, they like him, they think that he has brought prosperity back and full employment, and he is defending the interests of America worldwide. And in this case, that he has eliminated someone that conceivably could be described as an enemy of the United States. And so they say, what's wrong with it? Everything went fine. You don't need to justify it to me. It was good. If instead people have more of a critical stance, of course they can parse this and see the weakness of the justification, which in reality he didn't need to give. Because if you have a general, an American general who is very effective against the Iranians, it is no surprise if someday the Iranians, if they can, will kill him. Everyone can understand that. War is war. But they try to coat it in this sugary presentation that there was a terrific event that was about to happen, and that's why he arrived in Baghdad, and therefore we had to take him out, created, of course, then the necessity to prove it. And this has diminished, if you want, the success of the operation for him. And I'm sure that he is quite disappointed. But it is understandable, and it is a problem we are having now in this country, that after 3 years of his presidency, we have become accustomed to the lack of transparency, to the lies, and to the changing from one moment to another of the positions. There is often actions, tactics, but no strategy. There is no long view, long plans in the future in what we want to do, what we want to achieve, what is our objective, when can we declare victory. And this is what is missing, because that is not part of his personality.
And in the case of Iraq, we're talking that given the fact that the tensions in the region has escalated with this, the Parliament of Iraq said, we want the American troops out. The government of the USA were not going out. If by any chance they have to follow the order because they were invited to get in, but now they say, okay, thanks, go back home, the region become more unstable, because eventually what they were supposed to be one of the functions in Iraq was to fight ISIS. They're not going to have that presence. And in reality, Iran could have a much larger influence in Iraq. So if President Trump was going to try to diminish Iran in the region, if that happens in Iraq, the effect has been exactly the opposite.
Of course, it is the opposite of what he wanted, particularly when this happened, because at that point, the Iraqis were protesting against the Iranian influence. It was mostly younger people from the universities in Tahrir Square in Baghdad. But since the end of October, there were protesters there constantly, a little bit like what's happened in Hong Kong. And the people of Iraq were getting tired of the influence of the Iranians and their militias. And here comes Trump killing someone in Baghdad, and therefore opening up the gates of a reaction against the heavy hand of the Americans and their military presence, so that then the rage of the people now is directed more towards the presence of the Americans. So it definitely backfired on him. If he thought that the Iraqis would applaud, that is not really what has happened, because they understand that if the Americans can use such heavy hand against an Iranian general, they might also use it against one of their own. And obviously, it has been almost 18 years that the Americans are there, basically having the run of the territory and doing whatever they like. Any person who loves his country and would like to really feel independent certainly doesn't like that taking place.
The other side of the story is skeptics. They say, you know what, they believe that he was doing it, not the justification that was an imminent threat, if not to distract the public opinion from the impeachment. Do you believe that that could be?
That's quite a possibility, because obviously he is quite nervous, even though he has this bravado, to show that he's not afraid. He's quite nervous, uncertain, and unhappy about the impeachment process. And this would be in his mind, as the judgment in the Senate is approaching, a good distraction. In the news, in television, in the commentaries, in the preoccupation, in the front page of the paper. So he always uses very deftly this type of an approach to get the people's minds off what might be negative for him and busy about something else that might also have a positive repercussion on his reputation. Because no doubt those who approve of him approved of this and applauded and say, see, he's really someone who is strong and decisive and intervenes and protects us. So in a certain way, we have to keep in mind the following, that he was elected by not the majority of the Americans. Hillary Clinton per se won the election by almost 3 million votes. But because of the Electoral College and how the vote is divided, he won with less than 3 million that Hillary Clinton had. And he is thinking about that base. He says, if I can keep that base happy, faithful, committed to me, then I win. I don't need to please everybody. I don't need to do all the right things for everybody to applaud. I only need that base to applaud. And he has been doing it quite well, particularly, being in touch with even certain religions in the south of the United States. The evangelicals are very strong, and they have given their absolutely blind support to him. There have been some criticism even within the evangelicals that this is selling their soul, for certain privileges. But for now, there is no movement there. And there are plenty of Protestant ministers willing to bless him and to say that we need him for another 4 years. So in that respect, he has maintained, if you want, fidelity to his electors. And it doesn't mean that they are the best or the best informed or the most enlightened or the more international, but Trump doesn't care about that, cares about the re-election.
And precisely, talking about re-election, do you think that the relationship with Iran is going to go in which direction? For example, do you believe that he could be ready to launch an open war with Iran in order to get re-elected?
That could be a possibility if he feels in danger of losing the election, because going to war is often proven to raise the reputation of the president in charge at that moment, because people instinctively get together around their flag. And criticizing the president is akin to being a traitor, if not non-patriotic. And so it mutes very much the criticism. People have to be very careful in what they say. So he gets a pass, so to speak, and can slide into the election that way. That could be a way in which he thinks about it, and it could work for him, as it has worked for countless other politicians. He even accused Obama of doing that himself, that he went to war in order to make sure he was reelected. The only problem here is the region itself, and the fact that it is the source of energy, oil, gas, whatever, for countless countries in the world. So that if there was a war there, and therefore difficulty in furnishing oil to
the rest of
countries
the
in the world, and maybe some big ships carrying oil would be maybe attacked and would not be able to conclude their trip. They would disappear in the sea. This would cause economic problems, not only in Europe, not only in other parts of the world, but here as well. The price of gasoline would definitely jump and become a big burden for every family. But then it's not just that, it's all the transport that depends on gasoline or diesel or whatever to function, and all the other industries that are connected to the oil and to transportation and by air, by ship, by truck. And this could raise the prices to a level that are definitely not acceptable to the people, cause a recession, and this could definitely work against him.
Regarding impeachment, the leader of the Senate, Mitch McConnell, said, I'm not going to be fair because this is not a judiciary trial, it is a political trial. And therefore, I know that there's no case here, and I know that I'm going to exonerate him. What to expect of the process?
Well, that prospect has diminished a little bit because in the intervening time, when the president of the Chamber of Deputies, Nancy Pelosi, held back the formal accusations against President Trump, didn't transmit them to the Senate, and therefore they had to wait. More information has come to light, more revelations were known, more reflection, reflecting on it on part of the people, and different opinions coming to light, so that it is not as easy for the Senate now to dismiss it. Also because at least 4 moderate Republican senators have come at least more in favor of, for example, calling witnesses during this trial.
Then McConnell doesn't want to.
Yes, because McConnell said that he just wants to hear the case by the House, have a reply by the Senate, and close it with a vote, and that could be over in 1 or 2 days. But now with these 4 senators that are inclined to move towards the Democrats, or at least towards calling witnesses, he has to reconsider that because he needs his votes as well. He needs to preserve his plan. And his plan has been developed mostly in contact with the White House, which is something that historically is rare. It's the first time that so openly the leader of the Senate works with the accused to prepare for the trial, which of course belies this idea when he takes his oath, as he will, that he is going to be impartial. I think that there is more hope that there will be a fair trial. Talking about a conviction of the president and affirmation of the impeachment accusations, I think is very, very unlikely, in my opinion. But at least there may be a fair trial in the sense of really considering what happened, having witnesses coming, listening to them, having cross-examination. Here too there are dangers because the Republicans will probably say they want the famous quid pro quo. Mm-hmm. They will want the Bidens to testify if the Democrats want John Bolton. Mm-hmm. And then with John Bolton, the president may say, no, you cannot reply. It is executive privilege, you cannot respond. And that would create a big crisis. It would be necessary to go to the courts. That would take months. And so it would possibly, obviously, sabotage the trial.
Quick question regarding the possibilities of the candidate that represent the Democrats in the election. Now we have this new phenomenon, 2 millionaires, Tom Steyer and Michael Bloomberg, the former mayor of New York. Could either of them become the chosen candidate of the Democrats to fight against Trump?
This would be very, very surprising. And it is a very rare phenomenon. It is basically brand new. It is the first time that someone who has, particularly in the case of Bloomberg, infinite amount of money to spend, basically bypasses all the traditional steps that a candidate for the Democrats has to follow now. Talk to people, have meetings, have, going to Iowa, going to New Hampshire, trudge through the snow, shake hands, kiss babies, etc., etc. This totally cuts that off. And that is very, very rare and totally unknown. And so it is difficult to make a prediction because it is possible that people still will not really accept it as true or as real or genuine and not go for it. There's also the other problem now for the Democrats. They are starting to fight with each other, no, about Warren and Sanders, and this accusation by Warren that Sanders says women cannot win, and then also that Sanders now is using a script approaching voters that criticizes Warren. And then the fact that they're all white, there is no one that represents a minority, neither Hispanic, not Afro-American, nor Asian. And that, of course, has been a big disappointment for many, many people, that after all of this big field initially, it came back down to all whites. So it is hard to say at this point. But certainly this phenomenon of the billionaires entering the game, so to speak, in totally different ways and bypassing traditional steps that are considered sacrosanct and that are part of the folklore of election in this country. It has to be Iowa first, it has to be New Hampshire first, it cannot be otherwise, is very interesting and very exciting. And no doubt we are going to learn something maybe about the changing of the culture more deeply than we thought.
Because it could be an election between two billionaires.
And also using the electronic media more than anything else. Not many babies are going to get kissed by these two billionaires. They use mostly terrific, television and social media. And this would show how the social media is really now permeating our lives to the level of a presidential election. This would be an astounding finding about how our culture has changed.
Emilio Viano, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me. It's always a pleasure.